And welcome to episode 40 of PixlFeed Radio. And I have my friend here, David Hanscom. David, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. For those of you that don't know, David is a traveling event DJ, and he actually helps wedding professionals build their businesses as well, which is, I think that's really cool because, well, I'm old now, but when we were in our 20s and 30s and being in South Florida, I always joke around that everybody's a DJ. And everybody wants to, obviously make it big and get gigs and all that good stuff, depending on what type of DJ are you. But they don't really know how to get out there, how to market themselves. And I really like how you've done it so far. So that's why I wanted to have you on so you can share with everybody your story, how you got started and how you got to where you're at today. So let's start with the background. Music's part of your life, I'm assuming, since you were a kid, right?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks a lot for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And
absolutely.
So interestingly enough, I originally wanted to play sports. You can kind of tell by the influence behind me here. And I'm a little bit of an older guy too, when you can tell that guy's my influence. But
what's funny you bring that up? I'm not really a sports guy. Yeah. And, I watch like games when we're out with friends at a bar or something, but I don't watch sports at home. And when the Michael Jordan documentary came out, the Bulls documentary, I literally sat down and watched every single episode. And my wife is like, huh? Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Michael Jordan. Right. I watch every Michael Jordan game because if you watch the doc, obviously you know how focused the guy. He was amazing. Sure. He still is. So anyway, sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
No, that's fine. Well, what's funny too is like people always ask me, have you met him? Would you want to meet him? And I actually don't want to, just because I believe in the old myth that you should never meet your heroes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm like, when you watch the documentary and you hear other things about him, you're like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to meet him. I like my own version of him. Who it is.
That's so funny because I watched it. I'm like, I don't ever want to meet him. You can tell like he's just one of those people that all he cared about was basketball and he didn't care about the fame. Yeah. And when you see that level of success, that everywhere you step into, it's like a mob of people. I would get annoyed too. Right. My favorite band since I was a kid, it's Metallica, and now they're older, so they're more chill. But I used to hear, stories about Hetfield just being a total dick. I'm like, no, I don't want to meet him. Because it will shatter my whole image of the, that I grew up with. It's still to this day. I think I could do it today because it's more chill now. But man, it's one of those things, right?
Absolutely. Well, and to that point, so sports is what I really wanted to do. When I was in high school, I played baseball, basketball. Pretty much if you had a uniform, I played it. And but I ended up having to have reconstructive surgery on both of my ankles before I even got out of high school. So, so my parents and I essentially had to learn how to walk 3 times in my life. It's like, obviously as a child, and then every time they did surgery on my ankle, I had to literally learn how to walk again. So it was an interesting phase of my life, if you will. And my parents were great people, really supportive, but they weren't like, hey, let's get healed up and get you back out on the field. It kind of turned into more like, well, what else do you like to do? And I'm like, okay, well, I like music. I like being a class clown. And they're like, well, why don't you look into being a DJ or something like that?
Right.
And at that point in time, it was really only radio. My dad was in the military, so we were stationed in Bermuda, of all places, which was a really cool place to go to. It was a very small school. I was in a school of like 127 people, and that's 7th through 12th grade, to put some perspective on that, right? So it was a small group, small school. But I started looking into radio and television production, and that's kind of where all of that started. It's where all of this started. Mm-hmm. And initially, I was working in radio, and I loved working in radio, but realistically, not a lot of people in radio make a lot of money. So, I started floundering around a little bit, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I just was lucky enough to run into some people that were into the events and wedding space of DJing. And so that really started appealing to me. And I said, let me check this out. Let me give this a go and see what happens. And so I started really like networking with all these different companies around town and then some other companies in my state. And I really kind of said to all of them, like, I think this is something I really want to do one day on my own. But luckily enough, when I was younger back then, I knew that I didn't know anything about business, but I knew that business was important. So I was like, I'd really like to learn that end of it at the same time. And I'm wanting to tell you this up front, me talking to the owners of these companies. I want to tell you this up front because I want you to know this is my plan. I don't want to steal any of your secrets. I don't want to steal any of your clients. I don't want you to feel like I'm ever doing anything behind your back. So I'm telling you up front, this is what I want to do. Well, some of them were like, get the hell out of here, kids. No, you're not the guy. You're not the guy we're looking for. But some of them were very receptive to that, and I think respected the fact that even at a young age, I was willing to say, I want to learn from you, but I'm telling you now that one day I might become your competitor. That might mean nothing. That might mean something I don't know, but I'm just letting you know, like, this is where
that's a ballsy move too. That's a ballsy move, but it's a good move. Yeah. I never did that. I never did the whole, work for you for free, just to learn the ropes type of deal. I mean, I was lucky. I grew up in a household. My dad had, his own business. It was a pretty big company. So I will hang out with him in his office, since I was a baby. So I was in all the meetings and all that stuff. And that's essentially my mentor. And then later on in life, when I got into digital and marketing, advertising, and all that stuff, then I have other mentors that I met, throughout the years. And, some I paid, some of them I still have in my life, and they literally take it to a whole new level. So that's something that, I just had a kid. I'm definitely going to teach him that. I was like, you need to find somebody that's in the field that you want to go into, and you better get in front of them and beg them to let them intern for you for free. And you're going to eat shit for, I don't know how long, but that's what you're going to do.
You're not kidding. Like I joke with guys all the time that when I first started DJing, there were some events where it cost me more money and gas to go there and come back home than I actually got paid to do the event. Right. But the life experience that came from the event and the business acumen that came to the event was well worth that money. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. And I mean, now I'm 20 plus years into my career, and I probably still spend at least $2,000 or $3,000 a year on education, because I think it's that important. I think it's super important that we continue to keep educating ourselves and continue to keep learning.
Yeah, I never stop either. I mean, I choose a new mentor every year, depending on what part of my career I'm focusing on. Yeah. Because I believe, there's different experts out there, and I have the means and the access to pretty much pay for it. So it's, and who the big players are in your field. And, I mean, every time that I pay these top guys, whatever I pay, I'm not going to throw numbers right now, but it has paid like 100 times over, just with like, some of them, it's not like a big secret. Here's the secret. And no, it's just like, this is what you got to do. And once you do this, it'll click and it will work. It's basically a shortcut, but there's never, one thing I learned, especially in digital marketing, there's no big secret. It's just putting the parts together. And with me, at least, the way I learn is like, I take all this information, I take all these courses and stuff like that. And you think you're getting the grasp of it, or at least with me, this is the way I learn. Like, I think I'm getting it all in my head. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then like a month later, everything just clicks. Right. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I thought I knew it, but now I really know.
That makes sense.
So that's why, like, you should never stop learning. I agree with you 100% of that.
Well, and I think the other thing too, like there's a guy in my world that his name is Randy Bartlett, and Randy is. I'm just going to move this screen over here so I can look this way. I feel like I keep looking down.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
Down here, so
you're good.
I'm going to move my screen over here so at least I'm not looking down all the time.
No, I think I'm throwing you off because I'm looking to the other screen right here.
Okay. But there's a guy in my space called Randy Bartlett, and he talks about the 1% solution, and it's really intriguing to think that you're literally just kind of 1% away from being that much better every day. I think sometimes people want to grow, like, accelerate and maximize their growth. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also think if you can stay on a path of even just growing 1% at a time, then your long-term growth and also your long-term sustainability is there, because you've really kind of built a solid foundation, and you're not kind of building this rocky foundation on, like, quick, in some arenas the word black hat methods might be used, you know what I mean? Like, you're not really building on those methods. You're really building on a more solid foundation that has a smaller per increment growth, but a larger per increment sustainability.
Yeah, no, that makes 100% sense right there. So how did you, so you were doing that and you started working under these people, learning from them. So what was the next step? Obviously you were learning. So what was the next step after that?
I think for me, the next step was just finally figuring out when was the right time for me to branch out on my own.
Because that's a tough decision too.
Yeah. And I think the answer to that question was when I realized that, that I was kind of being held back in this situation that I was in to really accelerate to where I wanted to be. Because a lot of times when, and you know, this could happen even with somebody working with me, potentially, I would hope not. But a lot of times when you work with other people, you learn more what not to do than you learn what to do, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
And so eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, I think I've done a pretty good job of figuring this out. So I want to just go ahead and do it on my own. And I think for me, it was just one of those times where I had to say, look, if I don't do it now, I'm probably never going to do it. And I'm going to regret that decision forever. So I'd rather go out and just try and do it. And if I fail, I fail. I'll figure something else out. You know what I'm saying? But that's kind of what I did. And I just never really looked back. I mean, I still am friends with a lot of those guys that I worked with way back when, and some of them are not in the business anymore. I mean, they were in the business for a long time, up to the point when I met with them. So, you know, 20 years now, some of those guys are just out of the business and everything. But I never forget where I came from. And I was always, you know, I always wanted to be genuine to the people that gave me a chance. And I would remember when I did events, there'd be times where I'd have 3 or 4 different business cards because I was subcontracting for all of these different companies. And it'd be like, okay, which company am I working for tonight? I want to make sure I give the right business card out if anybody asks me for one.
So you went into events straight right away, right?
Yeah, like right out of high school, man.
Yeah, so that's not an easy, especially right out of high school. That's not an easy niche to get into, because you got to try to land these clients and try to get these gigs. Well, one, you have competition. You're always going to have competition.
Right.
But then I would imagine also, I don't know, how old are you? But what year was this?
This was in 1990. So I don't mind telling you. So, I mean, I'm 48.
So you were cold calling, knocking on doors, right?
I was calling, faxing. You know, those cool fax machine stuff, man. Yeah.
So yeah, man, you grew up like me, like hardcore sales. So that brings you down a notch. You know, I think people have it a little bit easier with social media and all that stuff, which is, you know, what I specialize now into. But I mean, that's the reason why I know what I'm doing, because I went through the analog phase of real sales through like cold calling, knocking on doors. I've been kicked out of places, you know, hung up on. And that's not easy, man. That's a lot of rejection. It takes a special kind of individual to deal with that and make it. Yeah. So, you know, what a lot of people do, they try to lower their prices to compete. But yeah, that's the worst thing you can do. You got to show more value and how you can do better. So what did you do to try, you know, to beat the guys that, you know, were more, I don't want to say experienced, but you know, they've been around for a lot longer than you have, to give you the, you know, they're like, oh, this is a kid, I guess, you know, how did you talk them into giving you the opportunity?
So really 2 things. Number one, and I think this is, so these 2 things, like if people that are listening right now are interested in getting into doing what I'm doing, this might be the 2 most important things you hear this entire conversation. So number one, I realized really quickly that I'm in the people business. I'm not in the music business. I'm in the people business. And what I provide is a music service, right? And so you have to almost be like a chameleon, which is a word that I used one time when I did an interview for a magazine, and they said, can you describe yourself and your business in 1 word? And I said, the first word I could think of was chameleon, because you really have to blend in. Some people you work with are going to be the same personality as you. They're going to have the same likes and dislikes as you. And then there's going to be other people that are just really difficult to deal with. And I don't know if I can cuss on the show, but there's going to be some people that are just real assholes. You know what I mean?
So no, I know. Trust me.
So you have to understand that you have to find a way to blend in with all of those people. You also have to figure out who your customer isn't, so you can stay away from those people. But sometimes those are the people with the best financial opportunity as well. So then you're weighing out, is the financial opportunity worth kind of dealing with the ancillary stuff that comes along with it? So number one, really being a people person. Number two, I think, is just understanding that you know, I would go to like event coordinators or people that were planning these events, and I would say, listen, I know that you have your top person that you like to work with, and I'm a new guy. You don't know me from Adam. I can't even begin to make you think that you would want to have anything to do with me. But here's what I do ask you to do. There's going to be a point in time where your number one guy or girl is not going to be available, and when that time happens, I hope that you'll think about me. I hope that you'll reach out to me, and I hope you'll say, hey, David, I want to give you a chance, you know? And that's really how I built my business, honestly.
That's how I got all my accounts back in the day.
I kept paying my dues.
Yeah, that's how I got all my clients back in the day. It was like, you know, you knew that you weren't going to just knock out the top guy that they always went to. And then, you know, luckily I had a way of doing things that brought back more value. So once I had that opportunity, that the guy couldn't do it or whatever, and then we went in and did it, it's like we knocked it out of the park. And then at that point it was like 50-50, slowly pushing the other guy out, because they get compliant, in what they're doing, and they don't keep innovating, right, or moving forward. That's really cool. So all right, so you got the experience from there. Obviously, you're gaining all this experience once you started working. And then at one point, did you decide, hey, you know what? I can help others like me in the wedding industry, with their own businesses? Because this is the thing. I've dealt with bands. I dealt with people in the music industry for advertising and marketing, like they're putting an album out and they want to do this huge social media campaign and promoters and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And listen, I deal with graphic designers too for the marketing side of things. There's some of the most talented people that I know in the world, and a lot of them work for me, and I love them to death because they make some cool ass shit, even like tattoo artists. Yeah. But when it comes to the business side of things, they're horrible. Absolutely. And it makes total sense because that's not their deal. So I'm assuming I'm assuming there's a million horror stories of people who are trying to do what they do, and they get screwed left and right, where they don't get paid at the end of the night, or they owe who knows how much in taxes, or so. Is that what made you, you saw people making the mistakes? Is that what made you try to help people too? That's why I started this channel and this podcast, because I see the horror, left and right.
Well, one of the things I realized really quickly is that this industry lets anybody in, and it quickly lets everybody out. And, if you don't find a way to be able to sustain being in the industry, and I use that term sustainability a lot, if you don't figure out how to do that, your talent alone is not going to allow you to do that. Because here's what happens. Either, you might be able to stay talented, you might be able to be talented and work for a long time, but I can assure you, if you don't have your businesses, your business in order and your financial situation in order, you're going to get burnout. You're not going to be able to do it. And that's, realistically, that's one of the main reasons why people in the event industry get out as quickly as they get in, is because, number one, they get burnt out because they're working their asses off and they're doing something they love to do until they don't love to do it anymore. And then when they don't love to do it anymore and it becomes a job to them, and then they realize they're not getting paid enough money to even make it a job, then they're like, shit, I don't even want to do this anymore. When you could have, kind of reverse engineered it and went back and said, okay, what kind of lifestyle do I want to live? What are my bills? What kind of paycheck do I want to pay myself? Okay, now I know what kind of money I need to make every year. What is a realistic amount of events that I can work? And again, just kind of reverse engineering and using some thought process of what really kind of seems like it makes sense in order to realistically, create a budget, create a plan, create a business plan for yourself. And I just think that so many people get involved in the events and in the wedding industry, and they're great at what I call their deliverables. So my deliverable earlier, as I said, is music, DJing. But whether you're a cake baker, whether you're a planner, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a videographer, whether you're an officiant, doesn't matter. That's your deliverable. And you're really good at that usually. And you're going to find a way to understand how to really do that. But if you don't take the time to focus on what I like to call the non-sexy stuff, which is all the behind the scenes that nobody ever gets to see you do, then your sustainability percentage significantly decreases.
Yeah, absolutely. And, accounting is not fun. Taxes is not fun. And dealing with the business side of things is not fun. Luckily, I got into a point where I don't really have to deal with it, but I still have to deal with it because I'm the one who has the last decision at the end, Yeah. And do I like dealing with that? No, I don't. I just want to concentrate on what's fun for me. But I think the biggest mistake that people do and that's any type of business, especially in the music industry and like live gigs and stuff like that, is that they undervalue themselves. They go out there and they're just so desperate to catch that client or that customer that they just cut their value by 3/4 just to get that client. And I'm telling you guys, it's not worth it. I understand. I was there at one point when I was desperate to get clients or whatever. And it sucks because those clients that you're dropping that price all the way to the ground just to get the gig are going to be the most high maintenance, annoying clients you can ever have, and they're never going to be happy. So trust me when go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I've never seen an industry where so often the quickest race in the industry is to the bottom, and that's sad. It's a sad thing.
It is.
Like you said, and I had a buddy of mine who once said, David, always remember, this is the show business, not the show friends. It's okay to be friendly with people before and after you have an event or whatever. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And, you know, a lot of times you have two different types of clients. So you have the like the wedding, the personal client, where this money that they've saved up or their parents have saved up, somebody has saved up this money or taken out a loan or whatever the hell they've done. But this event is so personal to them. And the financial attachment to that event is so personal to them as well. And it's easy for us to fall into that trap of, oh, I want to do nice and I want to make them happy and all that other, you know, rainbows and unicorn shit. But at the end of the day, like, it's still business. It's still a business transaction between you and them. And you can be friendly with them. But again, this is not the show friends. This is the show business. And if you can establish that up front, then you can eliminate a lot of the headaches that could come along with making other alternative choices.
And talking about business, you know, when you're starting a business, you also want to, you know, you want to service your clients. You want to take care of your clients, right? Like, I'm not going to get into this whole story, but when we got married, our wedding planner had like the most amazing reviews all over the place. And there was a million things going on in our lives. And when my wife brought it up to me, she's like, well, she has good reviews. You want to meet with her? I'm like, sure. And, you know, I was just like, sure, let's just get it out of the way because I don't care.
Yeah.
And the lady, first of all, she didn't show up on the wedding night. Supposed to be there. So there was nobody to guide us throughout the wedding night. So I didn't even eat at my own wedding because I spent the whole night talking to people and drinking at every chance I had. But anyway, I guess they were supposed to, like, you know, cover this whole thing. That never happened. They were supposed to take the decorations out from the previous night that were still hanging. I didn't notice this thing because, you know, I wasn't paying attention to all this shit. So, and then to top it all off, the videographer completely screwed us. The guy had good reviews or something, then hire somebody off Craigslist, give him a camera and it's like, go record. And we don't have half of our wedding, and the footage that we have is horrible. Like, it's not even us like getting married. It's like the camera was somewhere else. So anyway, long story short, the whole thing was a nightmare. My wife was completely pissed off. And then when I went to her, I was like, listen, you screwed up. I want at least half of my money back, or you guys are in deep shit because I can do a lot of damage online to you, like, for your businesses. And then he's a lawyer. They got loud with both of us. Like, because I was super nice about it. Dude, I serve clients all the time. So I understand how everything is, but it was clearly nobody gave a shit what they were doing. Yeah. And they pissed off my wife, man. Long story short, she's a lawyer. And let's just say those two businesses don't exist anymore. So, you know, it's like, it's about servicing. All they had to do was show up and do what they were supposed to do. That was it.
Well, and that story right there is a prime example of what I'm talking about when, you know, you're in the people business. And at the end of the day, you know, everybody wants to be professional at what they do. But I think sometimes the being a professional doesn't mean being perfect. And this is not something that I came up with on my own. I've heard, you know, somebody actually passed this on to me. So being a professional is not about being perfect, but it's about being able to do the best that you're capable of doing, and then man up or woman up when you make a mistake. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. The more that you can eliminate, the better off you are. But if you at least man up, woman up, and say, look, I screwed the pooch on this one, you know, whatever. How do we make it right? Do I give you your money back? Is that worth it to you? Sorry, I think my camera just went out on me here. Sorry about that. I'll get that right back up.
It's all right. I can still hear you.
Okay.
So, cool. You know, it's one of those things that I grew up well, but I always had jobs growing up. And one of the, you know, I worked in the service industry. I bartended in college. I did retail. You know what I mean? So I know how shitty people can be, and I understand how, like, annoying people can be. So I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and it's like, dude, all you have to do is just show up and do what you were supposed to do. That's it. That's all we were asking for. But then, you know, when people don't realize they're screwing up, that's when you really piss me off. And that's, you know.
And oftentimes people have to remember in our industry, man, this is like a live television show. When you do events, it's like a live TV show. You can't go back and redo it. You know,
it's one time. A wedding is one time. I mean, hopefully it's only one time.
You have to be on point, and you shouldn't just jump in because you think you're going to make, you know, sick bank or, you know, whatever Uncle Rico said in Napoleon Dynamite, right? Like, you can't just jump in for those reasons. Like, you've really got to take the time to pay your dues and understand what really is involved. It's not just showing up and playing music and people wanting you to take selfies with you and sign autographs and shit like that. Like, you know, there is a business side to it.
And one thing that we learned throughout the whole experience was that apparently, like, the whole wedding industry, when it comes to it's fly-by businesses left and right because people are just scamming left and right, or they don't do their job, so they think they can do it. I don't know what it is about it, but apparently it's like a huge deal. You know better than I do.
Well, here's what it is, Christian. I'll tell you, the thing is that the path of entry is basically you decide, you see this in wedding planning a lot, and I'm not discrediting any wedding planners, but you see it a lot where it's like, oh, I plan my own wedding, so I'm just going to be a wedding planner now,
Right.
And there's more to it than that. But anybody can do that. And anybody could say, hey, I'm going to go down. Well, at this point, you could just do it online. You don't even have to go down to anywhere. I'm going to order a DJ setup. I'm going to go to, pick your favorite business card on lawandplace.com and get some business cards that say I'm a professional DJ. And sadly, the end client, if as long as you learn the right things to say, the end client doesn't even know the difference between you and somebody like myself who's been doing it for as long as I have and really does understand the business. So it really is kind of sad in some ways and disappointing that the industry hasn't evolved more throughout the years to kind of eliminate some of that. There's small pockets of people who really try to, but as a whole, the industry really is still kind of far behind when it comes to those kind of things.
And one thing I noticed, and this is when we're going to get into my world, which is all digital marketing, advertising, which you're doing absolutely amazing job at it, obviously.
Thank you.
You have the podcast, you're doing the Facebook Lives, you're everywhere online. So at one point, did you make the switch of like, you know what, I got to take this digital and make people come to me? Like, what was the light bulb, when the light bulb moment, I should say?
To be honest with you, a lot of it is stuff I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I think the reason why I finally decided to do it, to be honest with you, is mostly when COVID came around. And our industry pretty much just got shut down. Like we weren't doing anything. And, you went from, you never ever saw guys online DJing to like every single person that's ever a DJ, whether they're a bedroom DJ or they're Steve Aoki or anywhere in between, like everybody is DJing online. And I even kind of fell into that bug for a little while, but I was like, this is not really productive. I mean, yes, it's kind of fun for the people that follow me and stuff like that, but I feel like my time can be served much better. And it's always been in the back of mind. I mentioned earlier, like the people that really taught me, the one thing that they always said to me is one day it's going to be your job to give back to the industry what the industry has given to you. So I just looked at it at a point where the gentleman who hosts my podcast and my Facebook Live with me, which, by the way, is not only a Facebook Live now, it's a YouTube Live and a Twitch Live. Like every week, I feel like we keep stepping our game up with it. Which
I love it.
A lot of fun. Yeah, man. But he's brand new in the industry. So he's a videographer. And when we started our podcast, we called our podcast The Rookie and the Vet. And we thought, what a great name for the podcast because you've got a guy who's brand new in the industry and you got a guy who's a veteran, been around for a while in the industry. And so a lot of our conversations are from two different perspectives, somebody who's brand new and somebody who's been around for a long time. And it's really a good dynamic. And so that was the original concept of our podcast. And then we just kind of evolved that into the weekly live program that we're doing now, and then kind of rebranded the podcast. And we're getting ready to relaunch the podcast. And the podcast is going to be a little bit more like what we're doing here, where we're really interviewing people from all walks of life, entrepreneurs from all different walks of life, which naturally we want to have you reciprocate and come on with us sometime.
Absolutely.
And just talk about their come up, talk about, what made you want to get in the business you're in the first place? What struggles have you gone through? What advice can you give people? And just hearing these stories of sometimes frustration, a lot of times success, but more importantly, reality, and not just the sometimes fluff that you see on social media. I just think it's going to be really inspiring. So we just kind of really kicked that off this year, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And we really just want to build a community of people that synergistically, one half of the community is a group of people who are either getting started or maybe struggling with their business, and they want to learn and they want to grow. They just don't know where to go. And the other half of the group is people who want to help those people. And so creating that community that synergistically works together, and their outcome is that the industry as a whole gets strengthened as time goes on, hopefully.
I think I like that you have that dynamic and you bring the reality check into the equation, because that's what I do with my channel on the podcast. That, I'm just straight up front about it, that especially with social media, Instagram and everything, is that people like to show off the success, but they don't show you how long it took there.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a few people in the industry that I admire, and at first I'm like, we'll get pissed off. I'm like, how the fuck are they doing this? And it's like, they're doing the same thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it was when I was first getting into the industry, the digital industry, and I'm like, and now that I know this guy's personally, it's like, they were doing it for 15 years before me, building to it.
And that's what Nick and I, not to cut you off, but that made me think about, like, Nick is the guy who hosts it with me, and that's Nick and I talk about all the time. And I always say, Nick, remember, this is your first year, man. There's things that I've experienced actually before you were even born in this industry, because he's a young dude. I mean, he's only 26 years old himself. I graduated high school before he was born, type of a thing, right? So, like, there's just life experiences that I've been through that you're just going to have to go through them to understand what you're dealing with. It's not a process you can accelerate. I can try to help you accelerate it, but there's some lessons that just come with experience.
I have a student of mine where I coach with Facebook ads and his store that he launched like a year ago. And he reminds me of how I used to be, because I used to come like, I'll share like some of my numbers, live with him. So he sees what I'm doing and he sees my numbers and he tries to compare. I'm like, dude, you can't compare my knowledge to what you have. You're getting there, but
it's an unfair fight.
Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time, and even before digital. So I have like all this knowledge. And he's like, but I see all this stuff on Instagram. I'm like, dude, reality check. South Florida, where I'm at. I can go literally down the block and rent a Lambo for $500 for a few hours for the day, and go down South Beach and take a shitload of pictures in front of literally there's a mansion at every corner. You don't even have to live in the mansion. Right. Or you can go to an open house and take 1 million pictures in one day and then spread them out through social media. And a lot of people do that. And these kids believe it's real. And I'm like, no, it's not, Now, don't get me wrong. Is there the exception to the rule? Absolutely. I know kids who are like 22 and like, oh my God, they blow my mind because they're just on a different level. It's just, it's a reality. It's just the way you're wired, man. Some people are just meant to be super successful from the get-go, and some are not. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's I sound super cheesy, but it's about the journey, even though the journey sometimes sucks. You know what I mean? But I can tell you right now, once you start making a certain amount of money, it's like, okay, I can buy this now. Awesome. You always want more, without a doubt. But it gets to, at least for me, it got to a point where it's just like, bills are paid, I'm happy. You know what I mean? It's like, I can go out and not worry about, how much I'm going to spend, for dinner and drinks or, stupid stuff like that. I used to, when I was broke, I used to like, oh my God, man, I just spent $100 in dinner and drinks. Like, what am I doing? Now it's like, you don't have to worry about it. That's what I think. That's what you got to get to that level where you don't worry about bills. And that's what I believe true happiness is: living below your means and just being that peace of mind that you wake up, you do what you'd love to do, which in your case is music events and all that stuff, and helping other people as well. And then you go to bed, with no stress, man. I mean, that's the way I look at it, at least.
Well, I think it's important to understand that, number one, the only life you live is your life. You don't live anybody else's life. Your circumstances are never going to be the same circumstances as anybody else's. There may be similarities, but there's always going to be variances, because we're all individuals. And that's a great thing about human beings all being individuals. Number two, like the old Notorious B.I.G. and Bad Boys song, "More money, more problems." Sometimes it's great to have more money, but that doesn't always equate.
It's more problems. It really is.
Right.
It really is. I mean, they're not like horrible problems, but it's like, I'm not a celebrity, so it's not, you can't compare it to that. But you got accountants, taxes, then business bullshit. It just, the more you grow, the more headaches you're going to have. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
And you just have to be careful who you take advice from. I think one of the best things that somebody ever told me was, don't ever take advice from somebody who's doing less than you are, doing financially less than you are, doing professionally less than you are. Don't ever take advice from those people, because there's nothing they can tell you probably that's going to help you.
No, absolutely not, man. Listen, man, we're out of time. We've been going for a while here, but I loved having you on. I love what you're doing. Obviously, you're taking everything digital with the podcast and everything up, for the helping the businesses in the industry, achieve their dreams as well. So where can everybody find you? So I can put the links in the description as well.
Absolutely. So for the podcast, if you just go on any podcast listening, Apple, Spotify, anywhere, it's just look up The Rookie and the Vet, and that you'll see a picture of me and Nick right on there. It'll be easy to know that's us. And then for our live shows, it is Wedding Business Growth. And that can be found on Facebook, that can be found on YouTube, that can be found on Twitch. Any one of those platforms, you'll be able to find Wedding Business Growth. And we usually do that every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. But sometimes we have to switch the date and time, maybe based on our guest or whatever. But we try to be as consistent with that as we can.
Well, I'll put the links in the description for all the social media platforms so everybody can keep up with the schedule and when you're going live and all that good stuff. Listen, David, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I will definitely gonna have you back at some point. And if you ever need anything, always feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. And for those of you guys watching on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to that podcast, make sure to subscribe. Thanks, David. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, bud.
All right.